Join us for this book launch event. We have the full day together. We have many of the authors. To start the day, Dean Eck, the Dean of the Faculty of Political Sciences, kindly came in to give us some opening remarks. So I'll turn over to Dean Eck.
Good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Faculty of Political Science at the Center for Social Development, Studies of Chulalongkorn University, I am very pleased to offer some brief welcoming remarks on the seminar and book launch on knowing the Salween River resource politics of contested transboundary river, which is, I think you can see from here now. I would like to warmly welcome the presenters and participants to the Faculty of Political Science of Chulalongkorn University today. I would like to thank in particular the book authors who have traveled from Australia, China, and Vietnam, and Northern Thailand to join us. It is a pleasure to see this book being launched at Chulalongkorn University. The book has emerged from a major research project and fellowship program that was a partnership between the York Center for ASEAN Research in Canada and the Center of Social Development Studies in this faculty, and in which many other organizations and universities collaborated. The research and fellowship program was highly supported by the CGIAR research program on water, land, and ecosystems in the Greater Backward and Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, or the DFAT. This support was not only financial but also in the form of capacity building, hosting policy forums and conferences, and providing sound advice and encouragement as needed. The Salween River is shared between China, Myanmar, and Thailand, and supports the livelihoods of over 10 million people. It is not an understatement to say that the basin is the crossroads on major political and development transition. Within the basin, there is intensifying resource extraction alongside large dam construction, conservation projects, and other forms of development intervention. The book that is being launched today contains both empirical studies and conceptual insights to fill a significant knowledge gap between these major rivers of Southeast Asia. It focuses on the contested politics of water and associated resources in the Salween Basin. The theme that is covered are resource politics, the politics of knowledge making, and how to reconcile knowledge across divides. Of particular note, the book takes an interdisciplinary perspective, with the book's authors coming from a range of backgrounds, including academia, policy makers, and also civil society. It is my belief that we should not underestimate the important contribution that research can make towards ensuring inclusive, sustainable, and fair development within the Salween Basin. Therefore, I hope that this book can help improve policy making and practice across the Salween Basin. The Faculty of Political Science of Chulalongkorn University is very honored to host this seminar and book launch today, and I hope that it will be evoked and engaged debate on the future of Salween River. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dean Eck. So we have a full day today, and the way that we've designed the sessions, we're very lucky that many of the book authors have traveled to join us. And so they will be presenting their book chapters. But as Dean Ag said, the intention is not just to listen to the book, you can read the book. We hope that, and I should mention that the book is available online for free. We made it open access, so if you want to access the book, then there's a QR code outside that you can scan. So the way that we've designed today is to have presentations by the different book authors about the work, but also a lot of time for discussion as well, for your questions, constructive or critical feedback. And then hopefully the structure leads towards a final panel on policy recommendations going forward to kind of reflect upon what we've learned through the process of this research and what different pathways there might exist going forward. So I think with that, we could start the first panel. And so we're going to invite Vanessa Lam, who is the chair for the first panel.
Yeah, so maybe if we can get, who do we have? We've got Alec, Lauf, sorry Lauf, I'm going to make you come up here. So thanks everyone for coming. I just want to kind of reiterate Dean Ake's remarks, and I also want to thank, there's a lot of people who have been involved in the conversations around some of the thoughts that are being presented today that couldn't be here. So they might be watching on a Facebook Live, hello, but we really appreciate all of your efforts and contributions. It was even a bigger project than you could say the names listed on the book show. There were a lot of conversations and collaborative workshops and research that were conducted over a period that actually is much greater than the 3 years that we worked on this project together. And I think recognizing some of that work is pretty important. And I also wanted to say that there is a particular moment that we are working within on Salween River issues right now. I think it's a moment where there are discussions and decisions being made about the Salween River, as well as other resources and river systems in the region. But we don't always see that the people who are most impacted by decisions about these resources are able to participate in decision making, or even kind of share their knowledge about the places that they live, work, and do research in. And so within that, we wanted to bring together a group of quote-unquote experts, but people who are experts in a range of areas, academic researchers from all 3 of the basin's countries, as well as civil society researchers, as well as policy professionals, to think about not just the primary research and analysis, but also what those efforts together across a range of expertise areas could produce together. So I think with that, I'm really excited to talk in the last panel about maybe some of the ways that these do come together that we potentially haven't thought about yet. And by no means is this project as a sense of research and collaboration finished. Many of us are still interested in working together on these different issues. And I think that the other thing I just want to emphasize here in the way that we structured today and kind of where this is coming from is that to be very honest, this kind of work and collaboration across these different areas does take time. It takes also trust, communication. It's not always perfect. There's always room for improvement. But it does take a lot of effort that you might not make visible in something that's, a hard book. So I do just want to recognize that, again, there's many other contributions that are being made around these issues that are really important to continue on. And I think that some of the civil society researchers will speak to some of those issues today in the sense that they're doing work with and in communities and making other kinds of knowledges about the Salween that might not be in a kind of academic book format, but are no less important for us to try to understand this really important river basin. So with that, I'm going to move to the first panelist. this panel, the general title is The Resource Politics in the Salween River. And this is one of the major themes of the book, as you can tell from the title and from our introduction. But this panel will focus on resource politics and kind of the contestations around it. But as you can see by the program, there's a lot of other ways we're approaching this idea of resources and politics that we hope to build on from these issues. So first we have Dr. Carl Middleton from here at Chula, also one of the kind co-editors of this volume, and he's going to speak to us on the hydropolitics, if I believe it. Actually, okay, from hydropower construction to national park creation, changing pathways of the new river. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. As Vanessa said, my name is Carl. I'm presenting this chapter on behalf of 3 other co-authors. This isn't the part of the river that I know the best, but I will do my best to represent the chapter as I can. So the chapter title is, and the presentation title is From Hydropower Construction to National Park Creation, Changing Pathways of the New River. Just to maybe mention this kind of idea of pathways, of trajectories, is a theme that we picked up throughout the project and in the book, exploring the different ways that we could explore the future. So I'll discuss on this. The New River, which is also known as the Upper Salween, is one of China's 16 major cross-border rivers. It originates from the Tibetan Plateau and runs through Yunnan province of China before entering Myanmar. It is well known for its rich biodiversity, and in acknowledgement of this, it is one of the 3 parallel rivers, alongside the Lanchang and Jinchua rivers, that is a part of the largest UNESCO World Heritage Site in China. Many ethnic groups also live within this river basin. There has been considerable debate in China over the past 2 decades about the fate of the New River. In contrast to most rivers in China, the mainstream of the New River is largely free-flowing, with the exception of 2 large hydropower dams near the headwater. On the other hand, over the past 2 decades, dozens of tributary dams have been built for hydropower and irrigation. In this presentation, I will map out 5 evolving pathways that have shaped the current status of the river and its potential future direction. Regarding pathways, we draw on the idea of Melissa Leach and her colleagues, who define a pathway as the particular directions in which interacting social, technological, and environmental systems co-evolve over time. So what that means in practice is that we talk with many different actors as a part of the research. We talk with government, the civil society, the community, to understand their visions for the basin, the policies that exist, and the ways that they see this, the way that their practices are now, and how they might go forward. The 5 pathways that I will discuss are a hydropower construction pathway, a civil society river protection pathway, an energy reform pathway, a national park pathway, and a water conservancy pathway. So first, to briefly outline the hydropower construction pathway. It incorporates 2 scales of projects: large dams under the West to East Power Transfer Regional Development Scheme, that I'll explain shortly, that led to plans for up to 13 dams, a 13-dam cascade on the mainstream of the river. And then a second scale, which is medium and small-scale dams that mainly serve the provincial and the prefecture level on the tributaries. So in the late 1990s, China faced an economic bubble in its coastal areas, whilst it faced underdevelopment in the western regions. The Asian financial crisis of 1997 also led to a shrinking of its export-orientated economy, whilst major flooding in 1998 also harmed the domestic economy. China's State Council sought to address these challenges by expanding domestic demand and prioritizing investment into Western China. In 2000, the central government launched a new initiative called the Western Region Development Strategy. And within this approach, the West-East power transfer strategy supported large dam construction in southwest China. And the idea was to transmit electricity from the southwest to the eastern seaboard, where power demand was high, but the resources to generate electricity was limited. The WEP strategy promised not only to meet electricity demand for eastern China, but it also sought to stimulate economic growth in the west of the country. In this policy discourse, hydropower was considered to be clean and renewable. It didn't really recognize transboundary or local impacts as such. Yet in southwest China, where the projects were planned to be built, it was recognized as one of China's best preserved ecologies, most abundant biodiversities, and home to many of the country's ethnic populations. So the WEP plan was proposed in the context of ongoing economic liberalization and corporatization of state-owned enterprises in China. The power generation section of what was once a large monopoly across the whole of the country was split into 5 companies, and the power grid was split into 2. This is significant because the reform led to the power generation companies competing against each other to try and bid to build hydropower dams on domestic rivers, mainly in southwestern China. And that dynamic is one of the explanations as to why the projects were pursued so rigorously. Despite a strong emphasis on planning and environmental impact assessment, the government itself could not easily control these corporatized state-owned enterprises. The local and the national government were impacted by some of the benefits, including the generation of revenues through taxes and other fees. Also, the state-owned enterprises often relied on local-level corruption to obtain project approval. The new river basin in total has about 36,000 megawatts of potential hydropower resource, which is about 1/3 of the total capacity in Yunnan. The plans for 13 dams on the mainstream were supported by the Yunnan provincial government, and they went ahead to sign an agreement with the Huadian group in January 2003. And that subsequently led to another agreement with a company that was formed to include local government agencies as well as the state and enterprise to move the project forward in July that year. However, at the same time, there was another dynamic. The UNESCO World Heritage Committee voted to include the 3 parallel rivers as a World Heritage Site that offered a different vision for development for the new river and also for the new prefecture government. However, the local government quickly initiated propaganda campaigns to promote hydropower development over the Conservation Project Initiative. Meanwhile, in China, environmental issues were beginning to be recognized, and the State Environmental Protection Administration began to play a key role in the debate over the new river's development pathway. So in particular, when China passed an EIA law in September 2003, this gave the State Environmental Protection Administration authority to look at the EIA reports that were being developed by the project developers. As the projects unfolded, SEPA, the State Environmental Protection Administration, held expert forums to discuss these reports in September and October of 2003, and various concerns were raised that then were subsequently reported in the media as a public concern. So very shortly afterwards, in February 2004, Premier Wen Jiabao officially suspended the New River Hydropower Development Plan. So that didn't mean that the projects were cancelled, they were suspended. So the project proponents, including the provincial and the prefecture level government, applied 3 new strategies to try and continue with these projects. They included building alliances with the media to influence public opinion, to try and create, and then the second is to create a hydropower nationalism discourse that essentially argued that outside Western interference was working against the national government to build these projects. And then the third was to promote, to support academics that supported hydropower to produce favourable research in favour of the projects. So as it is now, things have changed in China. Following the official suspension of the project, the new prefecture government reorientated towards promoting small and medium-scale hydropower projects on the tributaries. In that context, investors from the eastern area of China rushed into southwestern China because relative to the big projects, the small projects are easier to invest in. There was, however, a lack of clear regulations, and that resulted in a number of environmental impacts from these smaller scale projects. Furthermore, in contrast to the large hydropower projects, because there wasn't much reporting in the media, there wasn't much pressure. There was a lack of public awareness that meant that the government could act without much public pressure upon them. So whilst it's difficult to accurately find data on how many projects are planned and approved, as of 2008, there were about 45 companies seeking agreements for 85 projects. So the smaller projects have two sides. On the one hand, they've been proposed to support local communities because they make electricity available and they can help protect forests by decreasing the reliance on firewood that was the main fuel source before. But on the other hand, the uncoordinated small hydropower development has led to significant environmental degradation. And furthermore, a significant number of the small hydropower projects enabled associated mining projects nearby that have also caused environmental impacts. Reflecting the challenges, the environmental and social challenges of these, the Yunnan provincial government suspended small hydropower construction from 2015 onwards. So this pathway is very much linked to a second pathway, which is the civil society river protection pathway. So during this period, Chinese environmental NGOs played a significant role in protecting the new river from large dam development. Key organizations included Green Watershed, the Green Earth Volunteers, and Friends of Nature. In early 2002, for example, Green Watershed conducted a social impact assessment around a project that had already been built on the Lanshang River called the Manwan Dam, and they documented the challenges that people had faced, the poverty that the project had created after the resettlement of people that were moved by the project. Following national media coverage of the organization's study, the Premier at the time ordered the provincial government to investigate, to verify the situation, and to resolve it. Importantly, this increased the credibility of civil society organizations to be involved in the new river decision-making process. A couple of years later, in 2004, a consortium of NGOs, naming themselves the China River Network, organized towards the New Jiang River. They sent petition letters to try and protect the new river, and they also increased social pressure on the government and the developers through mobilizing public concern, including by working with the media. They also worked closely with various public figures and environmental officials, as well as the China Democratic Party, which is a political party, in order to influence the decision-making. So one of the key values that civil society groups held was that local communities should be positioned as policy actors, not as the mere recipients of development policy. So for example, in May 2004, one organization arranged for 14 villagers from the New Jiang to come and visit the Lanshang to see the impacts for themselves of the Manwan Dam. After seeing that, they reported back to their communities and shared their experience. Also at the same time, a documentary was made about the trip by a famous Chinese documentary maker that really changed the terms of the debate. So this began to push the government to try and solve the resettlement problems at the Manwan Dam that still existed. And in the end, it led to a compensation policy that significantly increased the amount of compensation that communities would receive in Yunnan province. This also, relating back to the introduction, the NGO network also coordinated with the UNESCO World Heritage Committee to encourage them to make sure that the government gave serious consideration to the potential harms from hydropower in relation to the protected area. In April 2006, experts from UNESCO and IUCN visited Yunnan to look at the potential impacts of the hydropower plants on the World Heritage Site. And they essentially concluded that hydropower development, mining, and the development of the tourism industry could be a threat to the viability of the World Heritage Site. And this led to a close monitoring by the committee, and it also led to discussion between the committee and the government as to how this situation should be resolved. So this is admittedly very brief, with more details in the book. But then we want to see how did energy planning interact with these plans. So the third pathway is the energy reform pathway. As I mentioned earlier, hydropower development was fundamentally shaped by the West-to-East power transfer strategy, and also it was shaped by the electricity industry that was undergoing profound reform. So in 1996, China passed a new electricity law that encouraged the government to support hydropower because it considered hydropower to be renewable and clean energy. And this gave an incentive for the construction of large hydropower dams in the southwest, both for nationwide electrification, but also for rural electrification as well. And as I mentioned earlier, one key dynamic was that the corporatization of the state-owned enterprises led to competition between them that really accelerated the rate of hydropower construction. However, over the past couple of years in China, China's economy has changed, and now there is an electricity surplus, especially in the eastern industrial areas. And so this is largely due to the economic slowdown globally, but also the changing law has led to overinvestment in coal and nuclear in China, and then also China's economic structure is changing towards less energy-intensive industry. So the net outcome of this is that actually Yunnan's hydropower capacity that has been built is not fully utilized, and the government has changed its slogan from the West to East power transfer strategy to Yunnan hydropower for Yunnan use. So in other words, for local use now. But also there's, one thing that we can argue is that the surplus in energy has reduced the pressure to build the dams on the new Jiang, the new river for now, at least for the time being. Meanwhile, the Yunnan provincial government is exploring opportunities to export power to neighboring countries such as Laos, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Thailand, and Myanmar. So then we start looking more forward towards the national, the fourth pathway we call the national park pathway. So it's been over 10 years since it's over 15 years since the suspension of the hydropower construction. And so even as far back as 2007, the Yunnan, a research office of the Yunnan provincial government had proposed the new river Grand Canyon National Park. However, at the time when it was proposed in 2007, the main priority of the provincial government was for hydropower construction. However, moving forward, the possibility of a national park pathway was affirmed in the 13th five-year plan from 2016 to 2020. So it actually outlines hydropower development and ecological protection alongside each other, but it gives a higher priority to ecological protection. And this is taking place in the context of China's redirection of national policy towards the idea of ecological civilization since 2012. So the Yunnan provincial government approved the establishment of the New River Grand Canyon National Park in August 2016, but very little information is publicly available, so it's not clear precisely what the park would look like. So there's a couple of things just to draw out. One thing is that regarding ecological conservation, the national park does not actually cover the river itself. So in other words, it might be possible to build a project that doesn't touch the national park. And the new prefecture has kind of hinted that it may not be inconsistent to have hydropower and the national park at the same time. A second issue is that the public was not really consulted, including indigenous communities, about the creation of the national park. A national park could go in two directions. It could be mass tourism that excludes indigenous communities, or it could be community-based tourism that could be more inclusive. A final, maybe a reinvention of hydropower that we're calling the water conservancy pathway is now emerging. And very few details are in the public domain, but it emerged during our interviews. And the essential idea is that the original cascade was understood mainly to be about hydropower. However, speaking with some government officials for the research, it was hinted that maybe fresh water is more valuable than hydropower for Yunnan in the future. And so the projects that were originally hydropower dams might be reinvented as multi-purpose dams that would be more thinking about water for irrigation, water for urban water supply, as well as generating hydropower. So in the context of the way that we think about this is not significant just in terms of technical planning, but in terms of shifting discourse. So to give a very brief conclusion, what the analysis of pathways has tried to reveal is that there are many possible alternatives for the new river, the Upper Salween. But at the same time, it's quite clear that in the process of the politics of development, not every pathway has been given equal consideration. There's no doubt that the national strategy for the Western development and the hydropower development was given a lot of privilege at the early stages, and it reflected the influence of the key developers the local government and the project developers at the time. And this decision-making proceeded without public participation. However, the civil society pathway revealed a rebalancing of power from what was originally a very marginalized position to become a very centralized position of being able to influence the outcomes of decision-making. More recently, the idea of a national park has gained momentum, and so there's questions now how this might be a different approach to thinking about urban development in Yunnan. So I think maybe the conclusion of the chapter, the most important point is that there are different possible pathways. Ecological protection is important, but so is poverty reduction in the basin. But whatever happens, the inclusion of local people, the ethnic communities within the basin should be placed centrally to decision making. Because until now, their voice has not been heard enough. And really, it should be those voices that are heard most dominantly in the policy discussions. So thank you very much for listening.
I'm going to suggest that we take maybe 2 shorter questions or clarifications, and then we can have more time for discussion at the end. And I'd particularly like to invite any students in the room who might want to propose any questions. Okay.
I have one comment on that, because what you said is not known in them. And what the Chinese government is trying, something positive is not communicated well in the people's mind. So it is a good opportunity to facilitate the downstream countries of what is happening and the dynamics of the government and the people based on this new river. So this is my
I think it would be a very good thing for China both to share the experience of existing hydropower construction and the lessons there, as well as the redirection of policy towards environmental conservation of the Nujiang. That would be very significant for downstream countries for sure. Okay.
Very short. So I am very interested about the conservation pathway. So, maybe I saw that they have a lot of the conservation and national parks. So this is alternative way of the green grabbing from the local natural resources now.
Okay, excellent question. I think there should be some lessons learned. I hope we'll link to your presentation this afternoon about the idea of a Salween Peace Park. So the idea of green grabbing is that conservation could be an approach that actually pushes people out and away from the resources that they have long used as the traditional uses. And there are many arguments that traditional practices have been sustainable in relation to the local environments, at least under certain conditions. So actually this is an open question that we do not have the answer to yet. So there are examples of national parks in China where kind of a mass tourism national park approach has been taken. And so under that strategy, essentially that's not so good for local communities because they get removed from their existing resources, and the main jobs that they can get are very basic skill jobs like cleaning and that sort of thing. That's not really meaningful work. But another potential approach is to acknowledge the close relationship between indigenous groups and the conservation of the upper river basin, and then ask what would be appropriate local tourism that would bring benefits to local economies whilst respecting the indigenous practice in the upper basin. So I think it doesn't have to be green grabbing. It has the potential to be, but it needn't be.
Thanks for an excellent presentation, Carl. We're going to move to the next presenter, Mr. Alex Scott. I don't know if you want to, how do you feel more comfortable? I'll give you this microphone. He's going to present to us on the hydropower politics and conflict on the Salween River, and his presentation, moving us downstream a bit, mostly focus on the Myanmar stretch of the Salween.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, it's really good to see so many people here on a Saturday morning. and not too many hungover faces, but I'm sure there's some people out there. Just me. No, not me. Yeah, so it's really good to be here. I think it's always a bit daunting following from Carl, because his presentations are quite concise and to the point, so I'm going to try to follow suit. As Vanessa introduced, I'm going to be focusing on the Myanmar section of the basin. I've been working for the last 3.5, 4 years with a network of civil society groups in Myanmar, and also on the Thai side of the border with some Thai organisations. So I'm speaking from quite a limited experience, relatively, compared to many of the people we do have in this room, but I'm going to do my best to give some kind of view of hydropower politics and conflict on the Salween River. So our aim in the presentation, which is a presentation of a collaborative work between, mostly led by Carl and Vanessa, but I also jumped in. Something in some way. Our aim is to give an overview examining the hydropower politics of the Salween. We focus on proposed projects in Myanmar and connections with neighbouring Thailand and China. We use a lens of hydropolitics, which allows us to better reveal the contested nature of these projects. In the Salween Basin, in Myanmar, there's a long, complex history of armed conflict and political struggle, which often goes unacknowledged in the technical reports looking at hydropower development. Here, the terrain and assumptions of conventional water governance are unsettled in this basin. That rack is too small. Sorry. So plans for large dams are not new, but pursued over decades, involving multiple actors across multiple scales. Actors include union government, domestic conglomerates, international financial institutions, transnational corporations and consultants, political parties, ethnic armed groups, and the Myanmar Armed Forces, involved in governance of territory, administration and civil society organisations. So our aim here is to expand and explore these multifaceted hydropower politics. What does it mean to use a hydropolitics approach? So, hydropolitics understands that the politics of water are intimately connected to constructions of territory making scale. Here we are less concerned with local state or local global dichotomies. We are more interested in the ways that the politics of water are contested across through multiple scales. In this sense, like hydropower politics is a useful lens for understanding debates and contests around hydropower construction and water governance in the Salween Basin. In the Salween River Basin, civil society organisations are integral to contesting this scale, but also to the production of scale. And through a range of strategies in the Salween Basin, civil society organisations have contested and challenged plans for large dams, upscaling, we can say, attention to their concerns, and reaching from what may be considered their local sub-national platforms to engaging at the national, basin, and international levels. Vanessa Lam has stated clearly, scale must be actively defined, delimited, and populated with goals and concerns. So I think here what we're saying is that there isn't a natural jump up in scale. Scale is something that is part of a process that is produced. Scales of analysis and decision making are part of processes of understanding governance and politics of the Salween. Scales are also produced and become subjects of action through these same processes. So in this way, a hydropolitical approach is a call to critically understand and assess the politics of water, with attention to what it accomplishes for particular actors and across certain scales, as well as what it forgets. So we're going to move on to looking at some of the scales in these hydropolitics. The emergence of the current status of large dam plants on the Salween River. Now, there's been a long history of land dams on the Salween. They date back as far as the 70s, 80s, but they were most prominently, I think, emerging under the Asian Development Bank's Greater Mekong Sub-Region Plan. And we can see also this planning coincided with a shift in governance in Myanmar, which was a transition from outright military rule into, this remained outright military rule, but shifted from an isolationist economy to a quasi-market economy. During this period, new flows of investment were coming into Myanmar. Effectively, doors were open for investment, but in quite a restricted sense. Also during this period, the armed forces of the country more than doubled from, I think, early 1990s, from about 170,000 to roughly 400,000 by the end of the decade, which is quite unprecedented in both the scale of expansion in the forces and the spending on armed forces. So, following this, you saw new plans emerging, new agreements being made between Thai and Chinese investors and Myanmar government. You also saw growing integration in ASEAN, and this has continued through the 2000s, leading to what's known as the ASEAN Economic Community. Most recently, we've seen other iterations of this by the China-led Belt and Road Initiative and the associated Lancang-Mekong Cooperation Framework. So the growing demand for natural resources, food, electricity and material commodities coincided with new economic opportunities in the Salween Basin, leading to growing investment. Plans that had existed tentatively on paper for decades were also given increasingly serious consideration. However, under the National League for Democracy government, which came into power in early 2016, following 2015 elections, there's been an unclear messaging on what role hydropower generated energy will play in the country's energy package, as it were. So we've seen the NLD say that we don't want large dams because of the environmental destruction that they can cause. Then we've seen, just a few months later, the Ministry of Electricity and Energy declare that the government is committed to constructing large dams on the Salween, and also, just a couple of months later, the Permanent Secretary for Energy in Thailand saying that they're in discussions for building large hydropower dams on the Salween River. This is all in 2016. So here is some of the actors involved. Again, I'm sorry about this tiny scale of the writing, but I can share the presentation with anyone who wants it. Basically, what I'm looking at here is the range of actors that are involved in the projects. And as the plans have become more real, we can see that the scale of politics involved in these processes, we can see them more clearly, and we can see the actors involved. And we can see from Norwegian consultants to Australian environmental consultants to multiple Chinese state-owned enterprises, energy giants, international financial institutions, and a host of government agencies from across the region, including Europe, also domestic military-backed conglomerates. So while large hydropower dam construction on the Salween River in Myanmar is most commonly associated with electrification and cross-border power trade, CSOs in both Thailand and Myanmar have challenged this. So we can see these plans on paper, but what's really happening on the ground is quite contested. These aren't territories that are governed by one administration. The Salween Basin is incredibly complex in terms of governance. I think this is a good way to skip on. In Myanmar, there's been 70 years of armed conflicts, which the modern history of armed conflict began pretty soon after the eve of independence. In the Salween Basin alone, there are no less than 10 non-state ethnic armed organisations. Border guard forces are basically paramilitaries of the Myanmar military, and there's 28 militias that we have been documented. There's surely many smaller. So governance is multi-layered, overlapping, contested, often congested, you could say as well. There's not a clear pathway to look at governance. There's been ceasefire agreements between some of the ethnic armed organisations. In 2015, the first multilateral ceasefire agreement was signed by 8 out of 21 ethnic armed organisations. This is known as the nationwide ceasefire agreement, but in fact, really only 2 of those groups actually have significant armed forces. So I think about 75 to 80% of the armed forces of the country are outside of, the non-state armed forces of the country are outside of this nationwide ceasefire agreement. So today the peace process is becoming increasingly fraught, and there has been more conflicts in Shan State within the basin and in other parts of the country. So here's where we're looking. I think it's easiest for me to focus on civil society because that's where I've been working, but we've also had a lot of interactions with university networks, with different actors within government, former government staff, and members of think tanks who have helped us to think about how we work across different scales, how we navigate our advocacy work in trying to propose alternatives to large hydropower development on the Salween Basin. This is something that Salween will cover later as well. So, CSOs in Myanmar, since I guess the early 90s, many of the CSOs were actually set up on the Thai border, began documenting human rights violations within the Salween Basin, and then slightly later looking at the environmental side of impacts of militarization and large-scale development, extractive industries, gas pipelines, mining, etc., and hydropower dams. So local communities and CSOs have mobilised campaigns at a variety of political scales, targeting a wide range of issues, as I said, related to human rights, land and natural resource governance and legislative reform. Some of these groups have, most of these groups are based at within their kind of ethnic groups, as it were. So you have the Karen Human Rights Group, you have the Shan Human Rights Foundation, you have the Kachin Development Networking Group, the Ta'ang Student Youth Organisation, mostly coming out of ethnic identity, a solidarity with territory, but also a very strong solidarity of place. And I think more recently, following the kind of move towards a quasi-civilian government, you've seen some kind of openings where people can travel more easily, less movement restrictions, slightly more freedom of speech, not far-reaching democratic reforms as such, but it has allowed groups to come together, I think, on a broader scale, where before it was more difficult to travel. Now those movements are being restricted again by conflicts, but Burma Environmental Working Group is one group that's come out of that to speak at the national level. It's a network of 10 civil society organisations. In a very strong report they put out called Resource Federalism, they've looked at natural resources and the role that governance of land, territory, water related governance can have on building towards sustainable, genuine peace after so many decades of conflicts. So here they argue that for sustainable peace to be realised, a moratorium on new and incomplete large-scale natural resource investment projects must be enforced. The 2008 constitution which they refer to was a military pen constitution that was drafted beginning in the mid-90s by the military government, which preceded the fairly rigged elections in 2010. And many people are calling for this constitution to be replaced or entirely rewritten with a devolved federal constitution that recognises the diversity of territories and ethnic peoples in the country and their right to self-determination. It's also a call for greater environmental sustainability and human rights based on this platform. Other networks that have come out of this kind of network building is the Burma Rivers Network and Save the Salween Network. Again, I'm not going to read that out. Anyone who wants the presentation, I'm happy to share. So it's basically a reiteration of the Burma Environmental Working Group's call. Save the Salween Network is a basin-level organisation that has been reaching up to the transboundary level in its advocacy as well, and has been working very closely through networks such as the Salween University networks, and yeah, I'll move on. This is a different scale. Also, I think I can conclude here basically. The Salween Peace Park is something that I think Saltavo will also cover, but it's been founded on a long-standing partnership between local communities, Karen Civil Society and the Karen National Union. The Karen National Union is an ethnic armed organisation that is signatory to the nationwide ceasefire agreement. They're working here to reimagine or re-establish an idea of what conservation means in relation to Indigenous people. So it's not exclusionary, it's based upon and steeped in the rights and identity of local people, and covers an entire district of Karen State. It's, unfortunately I don't have a map of it, but again can share. And one of the important issues here is looking at conservation in a way that can expand the concept of water governance beyond just the water in the river itself to include the land, forest, biodiversity, upland shifting cultivation, customary land systems, cultural and sacred sites along the Salween River Basin. So I think this is an important challenge to take on board because it's very much against the grain of big conservation work, and it's also really the devolved federal look at governance that is the challenge to a very centralised system that currently operates with government. So I'm going to skip through this, unfortunately, but basically we're asking the questions of what does cooperation mean, who is forgotten, whose voices are heard when we talk about governance. When we use a hydropolitical approach, we can look at that more closely. In conclusion, we've sought to draw out how scale itself is produced through these contested processes. Proponents of large dams have framed them as a development solution for the Salween Basin. This frame has been contested at different scales by a range of actors across a range of issues, including civil society, as we can see. These efforts not only position the actors involved as agents in water governance, but also rethink the scales of governance across local and subnational arenas. While in the technical documents of planners, the issue of conflict is not really acknowledged, collaborations between local communities, CSOs, and ethnic-owned organisations have reconceptualised and decentralised water governance in the context of unresolved armed conflict. So just to finalise, I think going back to where this is coming from, these initiatives have emerged from a sense of history and identity, one narrated from territorial claims linked to Karen people's calls for self-determination. This isn't unique to the Karen people. You can see these calls shared by myriad ethnic groups in the Salween River Basin and across the country. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Alec. Can we try this again? 2 questions we'll do, and then we'll have at least 10-20 minutes at the end for discussion across the panels. Again, if there's any students out there that want to ask questions, we welcome them.
Oh, wait. Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. I was wondering if there are any private partners or actors or sectors such as the tourism sector that are actively supporting and could lead to protect this river and to support the local communities.
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a lot of development actors in the basin area. If we're talking about conservation, I think we've seen the first real environmental study of the basin was 2006 in Myanmar, and that was organised and kind of led by local communities and a civil society organisation. There hasn't been a great deal of studies of the basin area because it's incredibly hard to access most of the basin. People have, I think Ian Rutherford from Melbourne University saw pictures of, is it the Namteng? I think the Namteng River, which is a tributary of the Salween and Shan State. And there was a certain kind of calcium cast waterfalls that he said the scale of them, there's nothing like it in the world. But you can't get into that area. That area between 1996 and 97, I think 300,000 people were forcibly displaced from the townships in that area, and it's still heavily militarised. But to go back to looking at which conservation groups are in there, WWF, I don't know, IUCN are doing something on the Salween. They want to be involved, but I think they're at very early stages. So I think actually some of the universities in Burma have been doing some of the early technical studies as well on some of the riverine ecosystems and the geomorphology of the river. But I leave that for our colleagues to talk about.
So yeah, actually I'm from Burma. I'm correct. So yeah, my question is related to the peace process, and because we know that these projects are actually the previous government have planned this project. So I'm wondering if they continue to do these types of projects, whether it's going to impede the peace process. Because we know that right now, especially with the KNU, the peace process kind of undergoing deadlock.
Yeah.
So what is your take on that?
So that's a really it's a really good point. Actually, we talked about that in the chapter, but I just didn't get there. The Monton Dam is in the kind of southern branch of the Salween and Shan state. That's where a lot of conflict was in 96, 97. I think the idea of a peace negotiation process would be that refugees who are still living in Thailand could eventually go back to their homes. Right? I mean, you'd hope that would be the outcome of reconciliation. But actually, those areas are still militarized, and the China Three Gorges Corporation is still planning to build 2 dams in that area. Northernmost dam on the Salween in Myanmar, the Kunlong, is in 2015 there was fighting in that area, and I think project work had to stop because of that. It was suspended. The Hatji Dam, there's been a lot written from groups like the Redmond Rivers Watch about how that is sparking conflict and insecurity in the area, and I think that would be a major driver of armed conflict. If it was built, I think it would be a major threat to the Karen people in terms of their role in peace negotiations with the government and push for self-determination. I mean, I think the dams, are so connected to that militarization of what aren't territories. These territories aren't really controlled by the government, ostensibly. They're still contested, so yeah, I think it would be a good break up the peace process.
Thanks, and great answers to some difficult questions. I think we'll move on, and then we'll have a discussion across the street if we have time. Lao Fan, would you humor us? And we have with us today Lao Fan, who is a lawyer and also founder of an organization based here in Thailand called the Legal Advocacy Center for Indigenous Communities. Welcome, and he's going to speak to us about his chapter, Local Context National Law, the Rights of Karen People on the Salween River in Thailand. And maybe I could just say, in addition, I know there's been some really good questions here, and I do want to say that I hope we can continue some of these conversations throughout. I know the timing is sometimes limited in the formal presentations, but I think all the presenters are also happy to chat during the break. So, thanks, Awesome.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Lao Fan from Myanmar, the only one province in Thailand which Salween River flows past. As I am lawyers, I am the past I conduct so many cases related to land, and I can say that almost all my land case is failed because of the legal problem. I will tell in the presentation detail. I will present in 4 issues. Maybe starting with the background of the problems in the local context, and talk about the forest law problems in Thailand, and I will conclude with the implication and question of the forest law problems. Yes, as my experience from my case when I conduct the court case, I always lost because the problem is the forest law. The ethnic minority doesn't have legal rights when they own the land. And when go to the court, the judge, not only the land case, but also the other case. The judge, the first question is, do you have land title? And we don't have. That's the problems. I will go to the case study. My case study of this chapter, I just focus on 3 communities beside the Salween River. They are Korean people, and uh, there are three committees. Two committees they stay there for more than 100 years, and only one committee is about 50 years. For the local people, there are about 70% is Thai citizenship, and about 30% non-Thai citizenship. Even they have the identity card, but not Thai citizen. There is problems. By the land law, only provide legal rights of land to the flat areas only. But in the Salween river basins, there are nothing else. Then the land law is prohibited. So almost of land of people doesn't have any land title. And in areas almost is current. Actually, in Myanmar, there are about 5 ethnic minority, but in the Salween river, almost is current and a very few of Chan people. Because they are current and area is mountainous. So they are living with agriculture, especially chicken farming. And these are almost all people like this. When look at whole people in the province, there are 7 districts with 415 registration villages with 100 household, 100,000 household, and 200, more than 200,000 people. These are people. The context is look like 3. It's the same with 3 community. It doesn't have any legal or rights of the land, and this context, this problem is cause the conflict between the forest law and the local community livelihood. When we talk about land laws, forest law, in Thailand we have 4 main forest law. First is the national forest law. Second is national park, and that is forest sanctuary, forest conservation law, and the fourth is wildlife sanctuary preservation. These are 4 laws, almost related to land rights. When we look at the number, how people, about 70% is farmer, and because the land doesn't have land title, so only very few, only 1.3% of land have land title, and almost more than 90% doesn't have any land title. And this problems because almost all people own land without land title, so they cause a lot of number of cases happen in the areas. On 2012 to 2017, they have more than 1,000 cases, and it's about 300 cases per year. And about 5 years past, there are more than 3,000 hectares confiscated from the government. And for the forest law, full forest law, this law is, we can say that criminalization to the local peoples. The legal the process to create this full law is actually the strategy to grab land from the people, and that's the problems. When they create this forest law, when we look at the content of this law, I think there are 4 issues of the law is have a problem. The first is authorize the government to declare the preservation area without community consent, and the second one is regulate to prohibit any activity of the community in the forest area, and the third is authorize granting permission to the officer, and the last one is define sanction for those who break the law. And this problem is I think have problems, and its implication to the community people is I think land and forest product using of highland people is as minority, as their heritage and local livelihood were criminalized because of community are under risk for charging and sue for criminal charge. And the next one is the community own the land without legal permission, which land of any rights accepted by the law. It means any activity of the government, if they want to do anything, they don't need to ask permission from the local people, because by the law, the local people doesn't have legal rights. And the next one is forest. Only the forest only belong to the government, and the local community let up any rights in the forest. This have example case. The last 2 months, I went to participate in the mining project hearings. When they talk about concerning, they are not talk about so much. It's so much because they say that the mining project is placed in the forest area, and a few land only to owner, and that land doesn't have land title, so they will not consent. And the important one is most of the projects placed on the forest area, and there's because the forest area is belong to the forest department, so it's under the forest department power to grant or dismiss the project to the mining, and they don't ask people about their problems in this area. The next one is this is the example case. The court try to dismiss community rights in land. I think I will give 2 examples. The first is about the criminal the Supreme Criminal Court forced one old current people to move from his land because of they just said because even he owned this land for a long time, but when look at the legal, they don't have land title, and then even they own for a long time, but they cannot stay there, then they have to move. And the second case is maybe someone know Mr. Koi case. It is a very famous case in Thailand. When the national park officer try to seize the lands, and they just put people outside. And the problem is when they go to that, they burn community house. There are maybe 20 house, and national park officer burned their house. After that, some lawyer try to encourage the community to sue the national park for compensation. Finally, the administrative court, because this case is go to the administrative court. The judge said that because the community, they don't have legal rights in this area because it's already become the national park areas, so they don't accept the community rights, but just give give a little compensation to the community, just to 20,000 to 30,000 baht per each household. That is not the right by the law, but just the officer not follow the process. This is not is also dismiss the community rights. And I think this is the problem when we look at the local. Now they have 3 large-scale projects in the areas. The first is the Salween Dam. The second is the diversion project from the Salween tributary. And the last one is the coal mining project in the Salween tributary also. And when we think about the community rights by the law to get compensation or something from the government, will have so many problems after that, because of they don't have legal rights. When they don't have legal rights, the government and the company will not full regard the rights for any activity in the local areas. In the past, we also find that the company and the government, they don't really regard the community rights when they the project doesn't happen, but the EIA or something happen, and they are not concerned and they are not provide enough opportunity to the community on that process. And thank you very much.
Thank you. I feel like the presentation really underlined this criminalization of resource users at the same time not affording them the rights that they're guaranteed even under those same laws. Can we take 2 quick questions to Lafan? Great. Shining and then
Thank you for your presentation. I believe that the community and the local people, they are living for more than several decades before the forest law exists. So in that case, I feel that the human right comes first before the forest law. And in Thailand, it has the customary land use or customary land channel recognized in the existing law or not? It is my first question. And my second question is about how many % of forest land covered in the country. The reason is that with the population growth, I think people need the local people need to, if the local people do not have access to the resources, it will be threatened to their livelihood or their food security. So my recommendation, it is also a question. As a lawyer and as a lawyer network, do you also have some alternative plan or suggestion to the new policy or new law to balance the use of the natural resources, at the same time also to conserve the forest and the resources? Thank you.
Yes. Actually, the Thai community, they also try to raise, do many things to raise the community rights of land. Okay, we can complain everything, and in outside we can speak everything. But the problem is when go to the table, official table or in the court, they don't think like us. That's the problem. They have their own reason. So we have like the community have community reasons, right? But go to the official reason, they think different things, and they have the authority to give permission or not, but we don't have, right? That's the problem. So now, okay, but we still try to put the community rights to be accepted by the law. And for the forest area, it's complicated. But when look at only in the Salween province, there is the Salween River basin in Thailand. Almost is forest areas. Now about 80, not already 80, 90% is forest areas, is real forest areas, and about 9% is the land which community already used without land title, right? And only 1.3% have land title, and it's in the Mekong context. And the last question is now about 5 years past, we are under the military control, and the community rights to land and natural resource is very low. And even the civil society and community try to push the law. For example, the land law, like the community land title laws. But the government, they also release their policy for land rights also. The government is set up, they release the new regulation to provide land rights to the community. But when we look deep to its detail, it's not like that. It's like a try to grab the community rights by the law. For example, they give like a permission to the community to own the land, but the condition is they have to, the owner have to plant the tree for 40%, and somewhere have to plant the forest, hold the land, and can plant vegetable and plant something under this tree. So some like the civil society in Thailand, they say that this is the grabbing land by the law, not provided land.
Sorry, one question right there, if you can find a microphone.
Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions about the land titling, which you've kind of expanded upon already, but my first question is there a citizenship obstacle as well to achieving land title for the communities, or is it just solely based on geography? You know, you mentioned the forest laws, but I just was wondering, are they even, I mean, would these communities even be able to obtain a title? I don't know what the citizenship status is for everyone, and if that's even a prerequisite for land title in Thailand in these areas. And then along those same lines, my second question is, if communities had land title, does that offer any protection besides compensation if the land was expropriated? Or would it just, I mean, if they were able to exercise community rights, would there be a way to prevent and to control the land? You mentioned that there's like certain requirements for what they can do with the land, but would they also be able to prevent any expropriation? Thank you.
The first question, by the law, land title, land title only allowed to Thai citizenship only. Then if even the people who stay in Thailand and have some identity card, when they don't have Thai citizen, but full Thai citizen, they will not have any right to get land title. But mostly local people who have the land is Thai citizen, and for non-Thai citizen, they also have problems because almost all there is escape from Burma to Thai during the war between at the near border, and a lot of people they escape to Thai. When they come later, so they almost all they don't have land. Mostly they just stay there, and if they have some relative, they stay with the relative. And now a lot of they escape to the city to get to survival. And the second question, I think it's not easy. It's not easy to answer and to define. I think it's very complicated. Maybe it's not correct to your question. The situation now, because of in the areas, is far away, and now almost all young people, when they think that in their home is not provide so much opportunity to them, and also their family. If they have opportunity, they will push the people to go get better job, better. So not so much young people come back to their home, and this is also the problems. Like the government, they concern that if they provide land title to the community, and we'll have more and more community, and people will use that land and will cause the environmental impact to the forest. But in practice, people reduce. Almost all people go outside, and few people go back. Maybe next that land will become forest because of young people. They don't want to go back too far in the land where they don't have legal rights. Yes.
Okay. What I'm going to try to do, since I haven't done a great job of keeping us to time, is I'm going to take 2 more questions, and they can be addressed to any of the 3 panelists, and then we're going to have a coffee break. So I saw Gary's hand and 1 hand over here. Is that all right? And then there's more time for questions in what follows for today. So Gary Lee, and then we have 1 question here.
To Lao, just question on clarification. You said 1.3% have land title. By that you mean Chinot, right? There are other, because it wasn't clear, there are other sort of land certificates and forms of that grant different types of access and use rights, but not necessarily full rights, particularly with Chinot that you are able to sell. So I'm curious, for the other 99%, do they still have other types of rights that might not be equivalent to full land title, but to their agricultural, house land, and forest land?
Yes, but practice they also own and then use the land, and because they don't have any land document, so they cannot sell. They cannot sell, and the government also doesn't accept the rights, and this is the problems. As I said, the situation under risk. This related to the case happen in each year. They have political problems like the forest department. They have the policy to increase the forests and try to force the committee. So they have the under-table order to they want the number of the cases of each year, one province, the 100 cases, and one district maybe 10 cases or 20 cases. So every year, even the local forest officer, they don't want to have any problem with the local community because they know that the local community stay there for a long time. Just don't have the legal right, but they stay there for a long time. So the local forest officer, they don't want to have any problem with the local community. But they got the secret order from a higher level to raise the number of cases. So each year, we'll have the case go to the court. You can see about 331 cases to the court of each year.
Yeah, and maybe having visited the area you're working in, I remember something I was really impressed, left an impression on me the first time I visited, which was even local government officials saying that because so much of the province is declared forest, even the land that we have our offices on as a local government, we don't have land title either. Just because of the way that things were designated, if it was declared a kind of forest land under the forest laws, it was not then going to be eligible for a kind of full private title. So there's an interesting, I think, and you talk about this in the chapter a bit, about that history and context of even deciding early on through these laws that most of the province was not going to be able to be eligible for kind of a full title. So it's limited some of those options for a long time, since the 50s at least, yeah. One other question?
Hi, thank you. So I have one question for Lao Fan. I think based on the presentation, we found that litigation it has been proven extremely difficult on this case. But then, is there any like non-litigation attempt that maybe like can be like a best practice? For example, maybe using like National Human Rights Commission. Sometimes they manage to do something, but a very case-by-case basis. So is there any that kind of experience? And I have one other questions to Alec. I think the last point on the conclusion, the last slide of your presentation, was talking about the collaboration between ethnic armed group and the civil society. And this is usually something that is civil society extremely avoid, like being linked with the ethnic armed group. Like, why do you think this model kind of work in Myanmar, and how sustainable it is? Thanks.
We have in the areas I work with, they have the lower administrative, we call in Thai we call Obata. Yes, it's a sub-district administrative, because the land law is depend on the land department. The law prohibits the land department to give the land title to the mountainous areas. But these people already stay there, so we don't have any choice. And the local administrative department, they somewhere, not everywhere, somewhere in my province, as I know only 3 or 4 areas, they try to create the project to provide land document to each owner. This the pilot project, not regard from the forest department, just provide land evidence. When they create this project, they also cooperate with the local forest department, the local national park department. This is just try to fix the problem, fix conflict between the forest department and local community, and they can use to negotiate in the local level only. When go to the higher levels, if have some project, or if go to the court, they also doesn't accept this land document also.
Thanks for that question. So I'd like to be able to phone a friend on this one, but he just wants a toilet. So in the Salween Beach Park area, I mean, it's a really good question, because I think you see a lot of blurred lines in some of these areas, and as we were talking earlier, and I think Nangshan can talk on this as well, in civil society organisation terms, it's very ethnic based, and so is it with the ethnic armed organisations. You have the Shan state armed groups, which are largely Shan within the Shan armed groups, and you also have Ta'ang, Karen. I mean, within the Salween being based, there are many, I think one point that we're seeing now is that ethnic-armed organisations are being called to account by civil society organisations to represent their constituencies in terms of good governance. So particularly in the Salween Peace Park area, the KNU has been influenced by local communities, practices of government that have been highlighted, you could say, by civil society organisations like the Korean Environmental Social Action Network or different groups. So now they've adopted customary land governance, recognition of customary land governance arrangements and administration into their land use policy. Now they're being implemented. So this is a very comprehensive recognition in those areas. So they're more responsive to this kind of advocacy. They're more accountable to the local population for a number of reasons, in many ways than the central government are. And I think we need Sokabo or Nanshani or someone to elaborate on that. But you also see collaborations where ethnic armed organisations may be able to raise questions at, say, a negotiating table with the government at a certain level, but ethnic political parties would be able to bring them to Parliament where they have representation, where civil society organisations will be able to bring those issues to a different level and will be able to influence a different demographic in a sense. So the Committee for Shan State Unity, in 2016, there was a collaborative release of a documentary film called Drowning the Thousand Islands, which was also saw Shan ethnic armed organisations, Shan ethnic political party and Shan civil society come together to call for a recognition of the war crimes in Shan state, but also to recognise the destructive impact that could be unleashed on this area by large hydropower dam. So I think there's a few angles you can look at it, but I think you get different answers from different people as well. And there is obviously tensions. There's not one way that it's working. So,
yeah. Thank you, everyone. And I think I'm going to ask the question asker back there to maybe raise this again in the next panel, since we're going to hear from some of these issues in a different approach, but similar vein. And maybe just to thank the three presenters again. It was a great start to the day, a really compelling, important set of issues. And Carl, are we going to have a break for 10 minutes? What are you? 15-minute break. We're still having a break. So it'll be about 11:15 back in here. Maybe just thank you again to the three presenters. It's a great start.